So, hello, Jan.
Hello.
First of all, thank you so much for taking time today to talk to me. I really appreciate that. And it's also
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm super excited. I have a lot to talk about. And first, I want to say how we know each other. I know you from the Rust Gamedev Newsletter because for some time the newsletter kind of like died down for actually like 1 year. And then you came with the initiative to like start it back. And I really appreciate it. That's like a big thank you, like a lot, you know? And yeah, that's how I got to know you. And then obviously we typed in the chat and I saw your GitHub profile and a little bit about what you do. And I was really shocked. I think you're like super interesting individual, and I decided to interview. So yeah, thanks. Maybe if you want to like introduce yourself a little bit and say something about yourself, that would be nice.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Jan Hohenheim. I'm from Switzerland, and I do stuff. Pretty varied stuff. I don't know. People sometimes ask me like what my job is, and I just do a whole bunch of stuff. But right now I'm doing a lot of game development adjacent things, and open source stuff, and interview stuff apparently.
Is this your first interview, or has anyone ever taken interview from you before?
No, I've given a few talks, but that's not quite the same thing, right?
So since this is your first time, you have to make a wish, you know, and it will come true. That's what they say.
I wish for you to get many subscribers.
Oh, I really appreciate that. So, my first question for you today, and actually, I'm really interested like how different people get into like tech world to begin with. So it's actually my first question to you. Can you share your journey into software engineering and what led you to specialize? Because this is what you specialize in when I checked your CV, biomedical science and neuroinformatics. Wow, so hard to pronounce.
Yeah, it's a bit of a mouthful.
Yeah.
So, the short version of it is that I am very interested in, like, since like a decade, in how the brain works, like which kinds of algorithms run in the brain, and I'm also very interested in consciousness. And in this topic, like, there's a lot of like spirituality going on and very metaphysical ideas, but I very much care about the aspect of, okay, cool, but we have this flesh computer in our skull. What does it actually do? Like what is actually like physically going on there? And this interest of mine kind of led me to into considering programming, something that I would need at some point in my life. And also, on the other hand, I really love video games. So one of my first things that I touched in like the tech world was trying to get my own little 2D sprites to move around. So I know when I was like a tiny guy, I fired up, like I Googled how to video game and I found Game Maker. And I was like, oh my gosh, there's a tool for making games. How cool is that? And they have this like little drag and drop interface where you like assemble things with like code blocks. And that quickly got to its limits because like it ends up being like this gigantic stack of things. And so I saw like, oh, you can actually write code that looks super weird. Let's try that.
What was the first language that you tried out to code in?
Well, yeah, that must be, I don't know the official name, but it's Game Maker language, I guess.
Wow.
So it's like, yeah, like in Game Maker, as I said, there's like this drag and drop interface for blocks, and then you can also like optionally convert all of that into their own little code that they have, and it's like this super simple scripting language that doesn't have any types. It doesn't have any. I don't think it has classes. At least back then it didn't have, and yeah, it's just like it gives you a bunch of functions and you can call them. it's like extremely primitive, but like for me as a small guy just looking at code for the first time was like, some magic is going on. But I figured out that if you increase the X value of the sprite by 1, it goes to the right. And I think that was the first thing I ever coded.
Oh my god.
So that, yeah.
And it's interesting. I know a lot of people, even Zelda, when I was interviewing her previously, she also started from games, and it's what like eventually led her into the tech world. I think it's also the case for me because I was a big gamer when I was younger. And there's a lot of people like also do this a lot that like are interested into games and eventually end up into like coding world,
Yeah, I also saw that a bunch of very influential developers started with their like early computers and hacking them because back then the games didn't come, like many of the games were written in assembly and they got shipped as assembly, so you could see what the developer was actually writing while writing the game by just inspecting the binaries. Like I know that a bunch of people of the early computer days, they started off by just looking at what their games were doing, trying to hack in like different colors or whatnot. And I think games are a really good introduction to computer science because like speaking from experience, when I'm programming something that is not game related, there is like this kind of disconnect between me writing something and the reality that someone out there in the world is actually using it. And I just kind of have to believe that. But like at the end of the day, when I code some kind of back end thing, I just have to believe that it works, but I don't have anything that I can hold, nothing I can look at, nothing I can interact with. And it's a bit moralizing, but when you actually have a game, you see like, oh, it moves. That's cool. It gives you this dopamine rush in a very like caveman brain sense. Of like, whoa, something is happening. I made something happen.
I think both game dev and also web development are good ways.
Oh, right.
Yeah, for like young people to like get started with computer science. And
definitely.
I went to like evenings. I don't know what they're called in English, but like an evening school. It was like 1 hour after school program for programming, and it was horrible experience because we were literally only like learning like algorithms, and that was like it.
Oh yeah.
Creativity. I couldn't see like anything.
Yeah, that's not super boring.
Yeah, right. And I was so disappointed. I quit. I told my dad I was really young, maybe like 14, and I quit. Like I was like, okay, I'm not doing this. And I thought for a couple more years.
Programming is boring.
Yeah, right. They ruined my like first experience with like programming, and I never wanted to touch it again. I was like, wow, this is so boring. Like you don't get to like be creative at all, which I was wrong about,
right?
Obviously.
Right. Yeah, I definitely see that.
So, I'll link your GitHub later on, but you have a lot of contributions to open source. Were there any specific experiences or influences early in your career that shaped your approach to software development and open source contributions?
Yeah, I can think of two things. One of them is I don't remember the specific software that it was, but this was from when I had already decided to become a programmer, and I was doing an apprenticeship, and I was using some kind of library. I don't remember what it was, but something in it annoyed me. I was like, this is not behaving the way I want, or like this API is not nice to use. And a friend of mine saw that, and they agreed. And then they just went ahead and opened a pull request for that. And I was so shocked by it. Like, what? You can just change it? You're allowed to just change it? That was
It's a brand new world.
Yeah, like for me, it was always like, oh yeah, contributions to other projects. This is something that other people do, like other people. And I suddenly was like, oh, everyone can do that. That's crazy. So that kind of opened me up to like this idea of, you can actually contribute easily to other projects without being like an extreme expert or whatnot. You just have to have an idea. And the other thing is, first of all, I used GitHub since a long time, and back then it had, I don't know how the exact restrictions are today, but back then it wasn't easy for people to do private repositories. So I had to actually do public repositories for my stuff. And I was really like super shy about putting my code out there in the public because I don't know, maybe this idea came from working at corporations or whatnot, of like, oh, this stuff we create, this is internal, this is like not for the outside world to see. And like other projects I was seeing, other libraries or whatnot, they were like super polished, and like it felt to be like, oh, having a public repository of my stuff, which is like not as polished as like throwing dirt into a pond or something. I don't want to poison the beautiful well with this GitHub or anything. Like, of course, now I know different, but back then, like, it was like, oh, I cannot just put my shit on GitHub and have it be public. That's like, but yeah, like the monetary stuff there, it kind of forced me to have it public. So I'm kind of glad for GitHub that it forced me to have my stuff public.
You know,
And
I've heard this point of view from a lot of other people. I personally have never thought about it, but I have friends that say that, yeah, I'm not going to put my code in public because it's shitty code. And
yeah, right,
people are
right.
gonna look at it and they're gonna never hire me because I code.
Yeah. It's interesting because I cannot identify with that at all anymore. But I know that I used to think the same, and I have talked with people with it. And I tried to convince them, like, look, no one cares. Just make it public. And if even a single person looks at it and can get something out of it, it was worth it.
My God.
But yeah. And another big contributor there was my first open source project that actually got some kind of small traction. So there was this video that was posted ages ago by a YouTuber called Seth Bling, which was called Mar.io, where he, I don't know if you've ever seen that, made a few rounds like ages ago. But it was about training a genetic algorithm to play Super Mario World. Do you know about genetic algorithms?
Yeah, I do, but I don't think I've seen the video at all.
Okay, so maybe for viewers, the idea there is that you have a neural network, and the inputs to the neural network is like, let's just say it's the pixels on the screen of Super Mario World or whatever. And the output of it is which buttons to press. And there's a function that tells it how good it is. And this function is, I think it's just how much to the right Mario went in that time. And the genetic algorithm part of that is that the connections of how things are structured in this neural network, the topology, is randomized, and you create different topologies, different neural networks, and you let them play Mario, and then you randomly select which ones of these get to survive in the gene pool. And in every generation, there's like this random chance for the networks to mutate and change their connections. And if you run this like a whole long time, eventually these mutations will end up doing some natural selection, and you end up with a neural network that plays Mario. And that blew my mind. I was like, wow, that is so cool. I want to do this. And then I looked into it and I saw that the code was completely horrible. And like, I didn't understand anything of it. Like, no one made a library to use or whatever. And I looked it up, and I looked at the paper that the whole work was based on, called what was it? It was like a weird name. Neurotopology of Neuroevolution of Augmenting Topologies. That was the name. And so instead of doing my homework for school, I decided to try to implement that.
My God.
And that became like a half-a-year project or something of my first attempt of creating a library for others to use. Like, the idea was like, hey, this is a cool thing. Let's implement it, and let's make sure that other people can use this as well for their projects. Now, long story short, I didn't have any idea about how to do like library designs, API designs, how to do like good testing. So like in the end, I don't think I reached my goals. But But at least I was like one of the very few people who had implemented a library at all for this specific genetic algorithm. And so I posted it somewhere on Reddit because I was on Reddit all the time anyways. So and I got stars for it on GitHub. I was like, wow, people star my stuff. That is amazing. I don't remember how many it was. It was like a couple hundred or something. And that really gave me this feeling of like, oh, I can make worthwhile things. And that was interesting.
So
because like I knew.
Yeah, go ahead.
It was interesting because like I knew that what I ended up creating was not what I had set out to be. Like it wasn't that usable really. But still, people enjoyed looking at it. Still, people like they weren't dissing on it. They weren't like, this code is horrible. Like, we will never employ you or whatever. They were all like, oh, that's neat. And some people even looked at the code specifically and were like, hey, why do you do this? And like, do you maybe wanna try this other way?
Mm-hmm.
And I was afraid of having like negative feedback, but the feedback that was like very constructive, and I end up learning stuff by it. And I think that was a very, very formative memory of mine. Yeah, what did you want to ask?
Yeah, I want to say that it's a good motivation. So your motivation was to share something that didn't exist with other people. So you decided to create it. Yeah, that's a really good motivation.
Exactly.
Wow.
Like maybe like the goal was at the end of like, maybe people can use this to train it for other video games and see like these AIs playing different games. That would have been cool. At the end of the day, like maybe there was also like the selfish desire of just seeing more cool videos of AIs learning to play video games.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
I hope since that video is posted, there's a lot more to watch now. Because the time has obviously.
Yeah, I mean this was like, I don't know, 7-8 years ago. Like AI is a completely different beast than it was back then. So that definitely happened. Just not with genetic algorithms. Like as we all know, like different kinds of AI got big and stuff. But yeah.
True. So my question now is, for you to create a project, the motivation was to share something that didn't exist with other people. But what do you think is motivation to contribute to projects that already exist and they're not yours?
For me, it's mostly annoyance. Like I'm using something, and I'm like, hey, there has to be a better way of doing this.
Oh my god! Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That's
it's okay. Okay, I mean, I could phrase it a bit more positively, but usually when I contribute, it really is something like, oh, this use case that I'm using is not supported. I want it to be supported. I could either hack around it by doing some weird kind of wrapper in my library, or I could just submit a PR and then it works. That's like the way of least resistance.
So
I think most of my open source contributions just stem from this idea of like, I want this feature, give me this feature.
Because you don't just open an issue, but you actually work on it to like create what you want, you know? I think people really appreciate that. That's really nice. I'm gonna ask a little bit more about open source, like for your own project, because I have a good question. But before that, let's talk about a little bit about Bevy Engine. So you do contributions to the Bevy Engine, and can you like talk a little bit how you're contributing to it and like why you even got interested with Bevy to begin with?
Yeah, so let's start with that. That was from when. Okay, let's start with when I learned how to program. I learned the object-oriented way, and I was like this big acolyte of like how to do like clean object-oriented design. And at some point, like I learned about the limits of doing that and about the virtues of functional programming and data-oriented programming. And I like my views on how to do software architecture kind of shifted into trying to be less object-oriented. And one thing I noticed that when I was working with game engines like Unity was that they very often used a very object-oriented approach. And I kind of had evolved past that in my own coding. And I was feeling very annoyed that these engines were forcing me into these models. So when many years ago, then Unity released their first version of dots, I was very excited. So that was the data-oriented technology stack. They had this idea of having like the good old object-oriented way of using Unity, but also if you can use this data-driven approach that is using this crazy technology called an ECS. And I looked at it and I was like, oh, wow, ECS, what is that? It's called an entity component system, and this is what is powering Bevy today. So like maybe I won't go into detail what exactly an ECS is. That's like, there's plenty of good information on that, but it's a very nice way to structure video games, especially like if you want to do this data-driven approach. And I tried it out in Unity, and I saw like, oh, this is really cool. And then they started breaking everything every month, like not documenting their changes, and I got really annoyed at that. And it was all super, super, super experimental. And at some point, I just kind of got burned with it. I'm like, okay, this is not usable. I wish this was usable, but it's not. But it kind of like planted the seed in my mind of like, oh, entity component systems, that's something cool to look out for. And fast forward a couple of years, I learned that there's this cool new engine in town called Bevy, and actually the entire engine is built around an entity component system. I was like, oh, this is exactly what I wanted. I wanted to only have the entity component system, none of that object-oriented stuff. So this was like 2.5 years ago, I think, which is not that long of a time, but considering that Bevy itself is only about 4 years old, it's more than half of its lifetime. So I looked into it and I was like really in love with it from the moment I looked at it. I was like, damn, this is exactly what I was missing from Unity. It's got like a really nice API. It's got a really extremely friendly community.
Yeah,
and another
thing that as well. I think Bevy community is like one of the nicest.
Yeah, it's amazing. And another is really cool about Bevy is that they put a lot of value into making sure that user code is structured the same way as engine code. So when you learn program games in Bevy, you automatically learn how the Bevy engine itself is working in the background, because it's the same concepts, which means it's supremely easy to make contributions to the Bevy engine, which also lets me to like very quickly do like small contributions to it, because like, yeah, it's supremely simple. And
I didn't know that. Wow.
That's a byproduct of this idea of like literally everything is built around the ECS. So yeah, if the user code is ECS, then the engine code is also ECS. So what my contributions to it were as one thing that I recently did that I was kind of like proud of is I got super annoyed by the fact that I didn't have a good way of how to explain this, of tiling textures properly, of repeating them. Let's say you want to have a 3D scene and you have some kind of wood texture, or maybe a texture for the floor. Now, obviously, you don't want the floor to be stretched all the way, because like, say you have like a cobblestone floor, then your stones would be like meters wide. You want this cobblestone floor to be repeated many times. And if you did this in Blender for 3D stuff, there was no easy way to get Bevy to just repeat it. You would have to go into the code and somewhere like hard code it to say like, oh yeah, repeat this 30 times, but that's not connected to the Blender side. So if you do your changes in Blender, you will not see the same thing in Bevy. And I noticed that there was this extension for 3D models that allowed you to do exactly that. And someone had already done a PR for that and abandoned it. So I decided to pick that one up. And that was my introduction to doing PRs for the rendering part of Bevy for how to communicate with the GPU and stuff. So I was really happy to see like someone else already did like a little bit of groundwork there that I could just like build onto. That one shipped in the new release of Bevy that just happened a few days ago. And if you go to the release post, you can see like my changes there. That was super motivating.
Wow. It's nice to see your name and be credited.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right. So in general, about contributing to Bevy, there's this process that they have that I think is really nice. A lot of open source projects have an issue with PRs that were done at some point in the past, but like they kind of get forgotten and never looked at. So Bevy's solution is that everyone can review a PR, and as soon as 2 people have reviewed a PR, no matter if they're like contributors to Bevy or just random people on the internet, it gets a label called ready for final review. And that just basically means that a maintainer needs to have a quick look at it, like just give a final thumbs up or thumbs down.
I was literally just Googling on my phone because it's exactly what I wanted to ask you, because I'm aware about this. I have some friends that have told me the story about it, and I think it's really cool. I think if you are someone that's like just getting started with, it's nice to have like quick reviews because everyone could do it, of course. And also
exactly.
Yeah, that's really nice. That's really cool.
Exactly. And also another byproduct of that is that you, as a person who is interested in like maybe improving Bevy, you get extremely fast results because there's a bunch of PRs that have only one review. So you can right now go to the PRs, just click on one that only has a single review, look at the changes, and if you think they're good, you click on approve, and usually within like a week, this PR gets merged.
Wow, that's
so you get this immediate feedback of you as a person have just improved the engine by just going there and doing a quick review. And that's also really cool for the people who are waiting on reviews, because some of these PRs are like 7 months old and stuff. But like, yeah, it's nice for them to see like that just one person can come along and make sure that it gets merged. But I'm a big fan of that workflow.
Everyone listening to this, you should go and check out the pull request right now.
Go do reviews on PRs. Yeah. Go do reviews on my PRs on Bevy. Make sure that my stuff gets first.
Oh my god! Wow. Oh, so now that we're talking about Bevy and a little bit about game dev, can you tell us about the Rust Gamedev Newsletter that I just mentioned in the beginning?
Oh yeah, sure. So I was made aware by the newsletter because I had like created several little crates that Bevy people could use, and I sometimes posted them on Reddit, and I got this message once of like, hey, do you want to contribute that to the newsletter? And I was like super flattered, like, oh, my stuff is in the newsletter, that's so cool. And this is how I learned that it even existed. And from that moment on, I was like very excited every time that it came out. Like, oh, it's interesting to see like what different people do. Cool. And then at some point, like the release schedule started to become worse and worse, and like it's like September, and I'm getting like, oh, welcome to the April edition of the newsletter. Wait, this doesn't line up. And I noticed that it got worse and worse. But I was like, okay, look, this is the problem of the newsletter people, not me. They probably have some reason for doing it this way. And then the newsletter kind of stopped. And I was bummed out by that, because I just like to read it. I kind of wish that it existed just for me to enjoy it.
You're so selfish, Jan. My God.
I tell you, all of my open source contributions are born of your selfishness.
I mean, at least you're honest, you know? Okay, I'm joking.
Yeah. So at some point, I kind of decided like, hey, maybe if like this doesn't exist anymore, I can make my own newsletter. It's like, how hard can it be? And then like some kind of light bulb went into like, wait, instead of doing my own newsletter, I could just ask the people there if they need help with their newsletter. And so I wrote that, and it took like a kind of a while because the Rust Gamedev working group is not the most active working group in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, that's how I got started there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And yeah,
Like,
happy the newsletter is back to life, you know. And
thank you.
I also hope that this video that we're recording right now, it will also serve as a way for people to be introduced to the newsletter itself. And
Oh yeah, go subscribe to the newsletter.
Yeah.
Very important.
And also, I know that a lot of people have games that they're working on, but maybe they're not aware about the newsletter at all, but they want to like post about the updates.
Yeah.
So if you have like
Yeah.
something you're working on, like feel free to open a pull request. And
Right. Also, if the game does not have to be polished at all, like I recently did this survey for readers to like gather information on what they would like to see in the revamped newsletter, and a whole bunch of people said they really appreciate seeing very small creative individuals sharing their work in progress early stuff, because it's kind of motivating to see other people, you know, doing their little things. So even if your game is super early and it's only programmer art and there's no source code, there's just like a guy moving from left to right, you can still submit that. People like to see that. It's cute.
I want to ask,
Yeah.
and I'm really interested in your comment about this. So I don't think you're going to be surprised. In Rust world, there's a really common joke that they say that there are like 100 game engines, but only 3 games, but which is not the case at all, right? I think I just comment about this, please.
Yeah. It's interesting because I definitely see some of that. Like, okay, look, I'm taking off my newsletter hat right now, right? Please share everything about your own engine. You're very welcome to do this, okay? But yeah, I notice it too, that a lot of people like to reinvent the wheel. I've seen this with engines and with UI frameworks, interestingly enough. I like it's kind of interesting. I of course, like when I was young and naive, I also got into the trap of like, oh, I want to do everything bare metal to get like the purest performance possible. And, like at some point you realize that like, oh, you have to decide, either you're doing a game or you're doing an engine. Doing both, you kind of need a team for that. You're not going to do that on your own. So it's like I have this mixed feeling when I see new people writing about like how they're writing their own engine for their game, of like, okay, I best of luck to you, but I don't think this will work out.
It'll be like a World of Warcraft situation, you know?
Yeah, right. But yeah, there's definitely like there's more released engines than there are released games. That part is true. But like with all the unreleased games that people are working on, like, yeah, there's definitely more unreleased games than engines.
Yeah, for sure. Exactly.
But like that is not just Rust specific. It's just it's very hard to actually finish a game, like release it. And that is something many people don't realize until they actually try, I think. Like and getting a prototype ready, that's the easy part. But polishing it, getting it out there, getting play tests, that's really hard.
What do you think is necessary for this to change and for us to have, oh my god, sorry, I'm joking, for us to have more games that are written in Rust? What do you think has to change for that?
I think a part of that is just time. Like creating games just takes time. And the Bevy Engine now is 4 years old, but like the beginnings of that was just like the initial prototype, right? I wouldn't say like that the first versions of Bevy are all that usable. And I'd say like if we consider like Bevy to be like, I don't know how production ready you can call it, because like it's extremely in flux, but like it's at least usable for creating a whole bunch of games. If we say like that's the case since like 3 years. Well, 3 years is not is not that much time for like a real game. You know what I mean? Like plenty of games that are made by huge studios take 6 years or so to create.
Mm-hmm.
So I think right. So
trailers of Cyberpunk were released like maybe 12 years
yeah,
or something.
right. I remember those first trailers that I saw from Cyberpunk. I was like, wow. And then at some point I kind of forgot that it even existed because it took so long. And then the game dropped, there was nothing like the trailer. I was like, oh, okay. Anyway. So if we consider that a whole bunch of, like, few people will quit their day jobs and start doing game development in Rust until it has proven to be mature, right? You don't want to bet your livelihood on something that is experimental. So most of the games that are being developed right now, they're passion projects by one person or a small team that they do like in their free time. So that also increases the time it takes to develop it because these people don't have that much time. So in my opinion, like part of that is just waiting until people are done with their games, right? I think TinyGlade will be a big contributor in this regard. Maybe for viewers, TinyGlade is, I think, the poster child of what can be done with Bevy. It's this very, very nice, cozy simulator of clicking together your tiny little glade with like a little castle and little trees, and it's supremely cute and chill.
Cute.
And it looks
super cute.
I don't know if the demo is still available or not. If it is available, go check it out. Go wishlist it. I have no monetary incentive here. I just like it.
No, you should say that. And I'll of course I'll put the link. It's really cute.
Yeah,
I also really like it.
It's extremely cute. And this one was written.
Sorry, go ahead.
And this one was written in Bevy. So seeing this getting released as a finished game, I think will be kind of a signifier to developers to say like, oh, look, you can actually not just do prototypes, but real games with Bevy. Mm-hmm. Disclaimer, they use their own rendering engine. So there's that to consider. But once you have that, I think we will also see more people going full-time into these kinds of things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
Another thing that would be nice to change is, but that's a bigger issue, is there have been many influential posts in the last few weeks about limitations of the Rust language itself when creating video games and also like big native applications. Mm-hmm. If people are interested, there's a post called "Leaving Rust After 3 Years of Game Development" that kind of outlines all of these issues that are not really like specific to like engines, but specific to Rust, the language. And then there's this also influential answer by the guy who founded Dioxys Labs, which some people might know, about like which things he would like to see improved in the Rust language and about which things he would actually give monetary incentives to contributors to add this. Mm-hmm. So if you're a language compiler nerd, you can maybe get some money by improving the Rust language. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But these are things that are not as easy to fix for individuals. These are things that are just the language will have to change over time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, true. And yeah, I wanted to mention that the game we just discussed, I got I forgot the word in English. My God, I learned about it in our newsletter actually. Before I even joined the newsletter, I was just reading about it and it was right there, and I saw it. Okay, I hope people won't hate for me, but I call it a GIF. So I saw a GIF of it and it was really cute. I was like, wow, it's so cute. I want to build my own castle, you know. So yeah.
Did it contain a sheep?
Sheep? Oh yeah, the small one. Yeah, I think we're talking about the same. Yeah, I think we're talking about the same one. Yeah. Yep. So now we touched the subject of Rust itself. What are some of your favorite features of Rust as a language? And how do they compare to other programming languages you have used? Not the programming language that we discussed in the beginning.
Yeah. Right. So this might be controversial depending on who you ask, but I love the borrow checker. Like it's very harsh to you, but it made me better as a person, you know.
Wow, that's personal.
The thing is, I have a big background in C++, and in C, many things in C++ are extremely similar to how Rust works, and a lot of management of memory and lifetimes and stuff in C++ is just vibes based, of like, oh yeah, whatever, man, just pass your reference, maybe it works, just. Don't think too hard about how this will work in multi-threaded context. Just don't even bother, and things will be all right. And Rust just takes these concepts that are not new, like C++ had them since ages, and just says like, oh, by the way, all of this actually has to make sense. and being confronted with that was very interesting when I first learned about Rust. I'm like, oh, I see. I should have thought about this in my C++ code to begin with, but C++ doesn't force me to do it. So,
Like a slap in the face.
Really, yeah, really. So I kind of noticed how like the lessons I took from the borrow checker, how I took them with me when I was still writing a C++ for a company, and my code started changing. I'm like, yeah, doing all of these things a little bit different. When people ask me like, oh, well, why do you do this weird stuff? I'm like, yeah, it won't work in multi-threaded contexts otherwise. And they're like, we don't do multi-threading anyways at this company. And I'm like, yeah, but do you want this to change at some point? Or like, is this... Yeah.
Wow, I can't believe you actually got that response from your company.
Yeah. It's funny. So like, yeah, if we got lucky, maybe some kind of multi-threading was happening so the user could still move their mouse while something was loading, you know. That was like the height of multi-threading. The program doesn't look like it's crashing.
Oh my god, I literally have tears right now. That's horrible.
I think this is something that just happens with C++ when you don't have this strict plan from the beginning. Yeah, references just get passed around. You just hope for the best, man. Yeah.
Hope for the best, but prepare for the worst when using C++.
Yeah.
But you transitioned from C++ to Rust, right? And do you think the transition was easy? I hear this a lot, like people asking, if I come from this X programming language background, will it be easy to learn Rust?
Yeah.
What do you?
I think if you come from modern C++, like let's define modern as something post C++ 14, maybe C++ 17. And you know about move constructors and things like that, then I think it's supremely easy to switch to Rust. Because like all of these concepts, they map. And as I said, the borrow checker just enforces things that you should have been doing anyways. The only thing that I think is like notoriously weird to understand is lifetimes, right? Lifetimes, once you understand them, they're really intuitive. But I think there's a bit of a disconnect of like how the syntax works and... But, well, to be fair, when I learned Rust, the lifetime checking was also not as sophisticated as right now. Like today we have partial borrows on structs, and back then you didn't have that. Like if you borrowed one field of a struct, the entire struct was borrowed. And I'm like, so it got easier. But coming from C++, I'd say really, really, really easy. Coming from a language with a garbage collector, might not be as easy. Like I have this side, I don't know if it's a side gig, but I'm actually allowed to conduct the final examinations for people who do apprenticeships in programming in Switzerland to get their degree at the end. So one of the things I ask people who become new programmers is like, hey, how does memory management work in your language? You're using C#. Okay. You probably know that if you do new something, it takes a certain amount of bytes. What happens with that Like, do they go into your memory and just stay there forever? What if you don't need it anymore? And I noticed that most people that I ask, they have no idea what happens. They're like, oh, I never had to think about this. And many don't even know what a garbage collector is, which like is a little bit shocking to me. But like, I also have to admit, okay, it's not that important for your day-to-day job to know what exactly the garbage collector is. But if you come from this mindset, then knowing about lifetimes and stuff suddenly is this huge new concept. So I'd say like if you come from C#, it's probably harder.
And have you ever had a student that was doing interview with Rust? So you had to interview him about Rust itself? Really? And are there a lot of people like that?
You mean like a student that was doing their finals?
Yes,
exactly.
There? Yeah.
Sometimes some of them knew Rust or like had like written one or two snippets in Rust or something, but no one ever used Rust at their company or something. Unfortunately, I've seen many very strange languages. I've recently had one that wrote an entire application in some weird SQL dialect, and I was like, oh, okay. I have never seen this kind of application written in SQL. This does not look legit, but okay. If this is how your company chooses to do things, who am I to judge? But that was banking software. Banking software is always supremely weirdly written.
Yeah. True.
But yeah.
And super. Just saying.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. The next question is, how do your studies? Okay, so yeah, we mentioned you're currently a student, right? Are you graduating?
Yeah.
When are you graduating?
This sounds so mean. Like when you're finally graduating. No, I'm a master's student right now, and I was planning to start my master's thesis this semester, but got some health complications that got in the way. So I'm actually doing that next semester. So probably gonna start my PhD in like half a year or a year or so.
And what are you planning to do your PhD in? Also, it's like super. Before we continue, I think it's really cool that you're managing to like study full. I think you're studying full time, right? Or even if it's part time, doesn't matter. Do actual work, so you have a job, and also do open source contributions. Like that's a lot. Do you even have for like personal time? How do you manage time? Crazy.
I will say having a job is less impressive considering that I live on stipends from the university, and the university actually forces me to earn a certain amount of money per year on my own. So I don't really have a choice in the matter of whether or not. Yeah, if I had the choice, I wouldn't actually go earn money. Money is gross, but it turns out I still need it.
Right now.
But yeah, I like having a roof. I like having food. So, but yeah, what was your question? Sorry.
Yeah, how do you manage all the time? Like, do you have any free time left for yourself?
I manage it well by procrastinating. It's like,
I'm those people. I'm hiding right now.
It's like, I know I should be doing something for university, but game development is just more interesting right now. And then I'm developing something and I'm like, Bevy doesn't support this. This makes me angry. Gotta make a pull request. And suddenly I'm doing open source work while doing studying. and then exams come and suddenly my GitHub contributions go down to 0 for like 2 months.
Oh no. And I also went to university. I just graduated in March from my bachelor degree. But I was also
congratulations.
Yeah, thank you so much. I was also working and studying at the same time, and it was a horrible experience. I don't think I really talked about this to other people, but it was really like burnout, and I really did not want to do like either one or the second.
I've been there. I've definitely been there. Yeah.
I hope you cannot hear the noise from outside.
I indeed could, but I will just pretend like I'm not hearing it.
Yeah, I might have to close the window in a couple of minutes.
Are people fighting there?
I don't know.
If they are having a fight, you should record it on the podcast. I think that would be some quality intervention.
It'll for sure help the police.
If you are watching the podcast right now, drop a comment below to say who will win the fight.
Oh my god.
All right.
Oh, so
Call to action.
talking about university. So I told you I was burnt out, and I contemplated about dropping out from school a lot.
Yeah.
Like I think every week I had this like feeling in myself. I was like, I can't do this. It's not what I want to be doing, you know. And I really wanted to drop out, but I didn't, and I stuck with my studies, and I managed to graduate. And I saw when I was searching for you, I saw on your CV that you have previously dropped out from your studies. It was a long time ago, but you have dropped out. Can you like share maybe a little bit of a story of how you eventually ended up at ETH Zurich, and what advice you would...
That was good pronunciation.
Thanks. And maybe give advice to students that might be watching right now and they are thinking of dropping out. And I think it will be a good advice to me as well, because I was there and I wanted to drop out as well, you know.
So what I dropped out of is a bit hard to even formulate in English, because Switzerland has a very different educational system than other countries. I could go on just like 20 minutes talking about the educational system. But the closest thing that I can compare it to is high school. It's not really high school, but let's pretend it's high school. So I was doing that, and I had a lot of like personal issues in that time. And I didn't really appreciate all of the things that I had to study. Like, I think everyone was at that point in their life where they're like, why am I spending my life learning all of these things that I don't care about? I will never use. It's making me miserable. I have this insane pressure to perform for exams. I am scared of like having bad grades and dropping out. And like, for what? And I also, like, in the back of my mind, I also knew that wherever my life would take me, at some point, I knew it had something to do with programming. So I know that I care about programming. So why am I studying all of these things that are not programming? And this kind of led me to, it was like kind of a mixture of intentionally saying, oh, I want to drop out. I never went and did this decision, but like I started like not doing my homework, not studying for exams, whatever, and like my grades go worse and worse. Like, I had this apathy to like, I don't really care, man. And at some point when I like did drop out, it wasn't a surprise, right?
Did you regret?
And I did not regret it. No. Because like this is very different for different countries, of course. But in Switzerland, we have this very prominent apprenticeship model where a lot of people, instead of doing high school, they instead learn a job. And they also have like some generic high school education on it, but it's only depending on your profile, it's either 1 or 2 days a week, and the rest is just like your job, you know. And I did an apprenticeship for programming, which takes 4 years in Switzerland.
Wow,
and
that's long.
Yeah. Others take
all the way to 0, or do you have to have some like basic knowledge?
No, you start from zero.
That's amazing, wow.
So it takes quite a while. And after you do that, you also there's different tiers of education. And in Switzerland, we have this double-edged sword for going to universities. It's called the Gymnasiale Maturität. It's basically like this certificate that you get. And if you have the certificate, you can go to a university. And it even goes further. The university has to accept you. We don't have, for the bachelor's degree, we don't have to apply for it. We can just sign up, which is cool.
Yeah, that's.
But it also means that if you do not have the certificate, you are not allowed to go to the university. So yeah, kind of goes both ways. And if you do an apprenticeship, you do not get the certificate.
You do
So
certificate.
you do not get it. You can instead go
The
to
apprenticeship, and you did not get the paper.
exactly.
Oh.
So you actually have to do some extra education afterwards in order to get the certificate. So this is why I have to give a little bit of background to this situation, because like it's not as easy as I dropped out and then I did that. It's like very specific to how Swiss education works, you know. But basically what this allowed me to do was, instead of seeing academia, I got to see how working class people work. Like how is it actually to work in a company? Because during those 4 years, you are employed by a company while you're learning the craft and you're helping with like small tasks and stuff.
I think it's really good.
Yeah,
I struggled a lot in university, and it was the reason why I wanted to drop out. Because my professor.
Yeah, I believe that.
Yeah, like I think it's also a case for you. The education was really theoretical, and I could not really like imagine how I will apply that working in a company that I eventually have to do to earn living and have food on my table, you know?
Yeah. So like a little bit fast forward to now, like I'm back in academia and I am surrounded by people who have either never worked a day in their life, or if they have worked, it's like something that they just did on the side to get by, but it was not something like a craft or a passion or something. It was just very utilitarian. And you kind of see that this kind of life experience is just different. So it was very cool for me to see like, oh, this is how working works. Kind of gave me this appreciation.
I hope you do your PhD and eventually some point in your life decide to become a professor, because I think having a professor that has like experience of working in a company and like doing things other than like theoretical stuff, it's super helpful to students. Like
I definitely agree. I also noticed that from professors around me as well. Like you kind of notice the ones that have worked before.
Right? Like, it sounds really bad, but yes.
It gives you this appreciation for, well, these are things that are actually important in real life, you know. Like one example is like how when you have only studied your entire life, exams are extremely stressful, because like you get taught that this is your value as a human being. Basically, it's super bad. But once you've actually worked, you notice that like, oh yeah, there's a lot of things that are way more important than having grades, you know. It's like, oh, does the customer actually care about what I did? Which is a very different kind of stress. And also it helps you in interpersonal relationships, I'd say, of like being in this team and having to achieve stuff together. I feel like in university, it's very often like everyone each for their own, and you have this very big pressure of like, you know, you performing as yourself, and the only thing you can do is lose if you happen to have studied too little.
I think,
but in a company setting, it's like, oh, you work as ideally, it's not like that in every company, but in a company setting, usually you work as a team. You support each other. You find ways to do things together. You have, it's good.
It's good, and you know, I call it Generation COVID. So I graduated from high school. I started university in September, and then in like March next year, the COVID began. So I didn't get to experience like even working as a group with students, and that's a skill to have. It was horrible, and I think I really missed out on like soft skills that you usually are supposed to gain, and they're really important, especially when you're finding or searching for a job. And I didn't get that at all. It was really
I can relate a bit, because I also started my bachelor's during COVID, and it was like just years of being at home, doing a home office, and at some point just being really burnt out by the fact that I wake up, go from the bed to the computer, I sit there for hours, and then I go from the computer to the bed again, and I'm like, what is life? Why am I living? What is happening? I think a lot of students are struggling with that. But yeah, my advice there is definitely like that. Your perspective on priorities shifts a lot once you actually go work in a company and you see like, oh, these things that you were taught your entire life, like from the moment that you entered school, that are important. Turns out they're not important.
Yeah.
No one cares about your grades. No one cares about your homework. People care about, are you an asshole to other people? Are you friendly to be around other people? Those are the important skills.
Yeah, I don't think anyone has ever. I think my company didn't even know that I was in university, you know? I don't think anyone ever asked for my diploma. Like, never. It never happened.
Right. So, of course, now I am back in university, but that was a very, very active choice of like, oh, I want to, as I said before, I very much care about like, how does the brain work? And I knew that this was not something I would discover at a software company, right?
And so not something that you can just Google and understand on your
exactly. Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
That's a good point. If you care about something like software development, you don't need to go to university. Everything is online for free, no problem. Just don't go to university if you don't want to. But for some things like biology, you kind of need to be in a lab setting to learn some things. And I don't think you have the equipment to look at some frog embryos at home. Sorry. So you kind of need to go to university for that. And so for when I went back to university, I knew that it was like I was in a very different place personally than when I dropped out, because I didn't have as many social, like personal problems anymore. So suddenly learning about all of these different things was fun, because I actually, I learned about just programming for 4 years, and now I had very many different things to learn about, and suddenly was interesting. But that was also because it felt like an active choice to go back to university. So, yeah.
But it's also, what I also struggled with, not that much, but when I graduated from high school, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to study. So I think when you take a little bit of a break, so in your case, it was doing the apprenticeship, you really understood like what was your passion and what you wanted to study at university. And of course, studying is also like doing a full-time job, and right. And if you, I don't know, if you, let's say, like start and at certain point you're like, let's say in my case, like I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do and I drop out. Right. Instead of doing that, I could have just like waited a little bit and have like thought about exactly what I want to do and what is the passion. I think that would be my
it's a good point.
Instead of like jumping into something straight away. So
it's a very good point.
I think you have a really good road. It's like really cool.
I know a lot of people who did like a year before they started their bachelor's, and I think that was a pretty good idea as well, of like a year of where they just did odd jobs and just thought about what they want to do before starting their bachelor's.
I also but my parents were like, no, well, you should go to university.
Yeah, it's kind of unfortunate because you have to come from a certain point of privilege to even be like allowed to do that. So but if you have the opportunity, you should do that. And another thing I want to say to students is that when I was working, I very often got from working class people this vibe of like, oh, we are the ones who are doing actual work, like 9 to 5, and students, they have an easy life, they're doing partying all day. They don't have to do actual work. They just have to study a bit. And then like when I went to university, like honestly it was way more stressful than working.
Right?
Because like because for working, you go there at 8, you come back home at 5, that's it. You don't have to think about it anymore.
Laptop club.
But for university, exactly. But for university, it's like, oh yeah, so here are your classes, here are your things that you have to do every week. And you have your exam, and you just need to do that whenever. But whenever means all the time. Yeah. So you never really have this feeling of, oh, I am allowed to have fun right now. Whenever you're having fun, there's always this, at least for me, this kind of feeling in the back of my mind of, this is a trade-off that I'm doing actively right now. I am choosing to not study. I could be studying right now. Maybe I should be studying right now. Yeah, and that is just something, this nagging thing in the back of your mind sometimes doesn't allow you to relax, and that is extremely stressful. So if you're a student out there, it's hard. Like if you talk with other people who have not been students, they kind of don't know the feeling. But yeah, it is way harder than it looks.
True. And also your university, I like to call it the MIT of Europe. It's really famous, right?
Yeah, it is.
And I wanted to ask, I mean, I'm pretty sure you're doing like really cool stuff and like studies are going great. Have you met maybe a professor or other students that are into Rust? Or maybe like you have a professor that wanted to like show something with Rust related? Have you ever had that experience, or maybe anyone has like mentioned that before?
The thing is that I am doing like mostly neuroinformatics lectures, right? And they're like languages that you care about are Python and maybe MATLAB if you're very unlucky.
Oh, not the
So exactly. Like, for anyone out there, do not use MATLAB.
No.
It is the devil. And so maybe you see like a tiny sliver of C++, but the people there, they fundamentally don't know how to really program. They know how to throw random functions at the computer, and sometimes it does what you want it to. So these people have no idea like what Rust is. But what I did have is like just last week, or was it last week? I don't know. I'm not good with time. Just the other week, it was Rustfest 2024 in Zurich, and that was hosted by the ETH.
Really?
And
wow.
Yes.
Wow.
And I actually got to give a talk there about doing game development with Bevy. So I got to be there in this ETH room and do a lecture about Bevy. So yeah. Also got this free plushie out of it. So that's good.
It's so cute. It's a little tiny fairies. Oh.
So there was definitely some Rust happening at ETH, you know. But since I am not in the computer science track, I don't know how hard, like how represented it is there. I definitely know that students have heard of it, right? It's just like it's just hard to find someone who actually writes it.
Yeah, true. Okay, let's see what is our next question. 1 second. Someone's talking on the phone, I think.
I'll pretend to drink water in the meantime.
Okay, yeah, this is a good question, actually. How do your studies in neural systems and computation intersect with your software engineering work? And what exciting synergies have you discovered?
All right, so let me start with a rant there.
Okay.
So as I said before, lots of people who work in I'll say biology in general, they just kind of they learn a simulacrum of programming. They don't learn actual programming. They just learn like how to throw magic incantations at the computer, and like sometimes numbers come back and they mean something. And I want to fully blame the university there. Like they should be doing a better job there. So a lot of my experience there was looking at code by others and kind of having to teach them what their code does. So that's an interesting, exciting synergy, I guess. The most important one was, I don't want to disclose any names here, but I was involved in a project for a algorithm that should help find, how do I keep this vague enough? It should find zones in the brain that should be removed by a surgeon during operations. And this software had no tests. And I was very scared by that. Of like, hey, you're working on this. People are changing the functions, and you don't have any automatic tests. You don't see if this changes anything. So I kind of had to do a little workshop with the involved team of like, look, this is how you test code. And and like I kind of forced them to like adopt the test suite, and now it has a test suite, and when they change their code, they know that the program still behaves the correct way. But just knowing that this software that might one day be used for neurosurgeons doesn't have any tests, that was shocking. Shocking to say the least.
Oh my!
So that is part one of my intersection. If you are able to program, then you have a very good career in biology. Like, if you care, exactly. No, it really is. It really is true. Like, so many times in my academic career, people were just really, really happy and glad that someone was there who was willing to code something. So if you're into programming and you're like a little bit interested in biology, it doesn't have to be much. There's a blooming career out there for you.
Oh my God. Wow.
So the other intersection there is that I'm currently looking forward to different things that I want to tackle on during my master's thesis. One of them is so my interest is currently bioplausible learning algorithms for the neocortex. So that's a bit of a mouthful. What does that mean? It kind of means like AI works in a certain way, but like what the things that we call AI today, it's very, very much accepted in the scientific community that this is not plausible for the human brain. It's like the human brain does different algorithms. That's very clear. So an open question is, okay, if we have different algorithms, what are they? What is our meat computer doing exactly? And one special area of interest there is the neocortex, which is, I won't get into details, but that one is basically the thinky part of your brain. And our institute has a few ideas of like different algorithms that could be running there. And the thing with these is you have to test how they perform. Like, okay, it's hard to confirm or deny whether or not this thing that we postulate is actually like useful or not. Let's see how it behaves in real tasks. And one possibility there is to develop spatial navigation tasks of like, you have a simulated maze and you have some kind of AI agent in this maze, and it has to navigate the maze or learn how to navigate the maze. And that is something I could very well implement with Bevy and Rust.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh my God.
Usually for these AI things, the overlap with Rust is less big because usually they're written in Python. And but the good thing is if we're developing new algorithms anyways, they're not written yet.
So,
or like if they're written,
Rust.
yeah, exactly. Or if they're written, they're like just like one big Python script with like 1,000 lines, and it's bad, but you can port it. It works. So yeah, that's something exciting to look at. And other things that I discovered, like, as I don't know how exciting this synergy is, but like one thing that I noticed is that academics oftentimes spend a lot of their time doing absolute bullshit work. Like, oh, I was working at I was doing like an internship at a place that does MRIs. And a huge part of their day is just labeling data on their computer, putting it in the right folder, sending it from A to B. And it's like, this is hours per, let me give you an estimate. This was like about, I'd say 10 hours per week for PhD students. So these PhD students, they were being paid for doing this, right? And this is 10 hours per week that was automatable. So I went there and I just wrote scripts that automated
Like that. Wow. Good.
And people were like, what?
It took our work away.
And the funny thing is that like lots of these people, they were kind of stuck in this quicksand of like, oh yeah, it's always been this way. Like, nah, it's fine. You don't have to code it. It's okay. It's really not a big deal. Because like they're used to coding being this really scary thing that no one wants to do. And I'm like, no, I cannot look at you doing this manually. No matter what, I will write this script and you will be happy about it. And then we're like, wow, that really works for me. So yeah, as I said, like if you can program, you have a good career in biology.
Oh my god. Okay. So yeah, I hope the viewers here that can code think about learning a bit of biology and career in biology. My next question is, I think I should have asked this question all the way in the beginning, but it's okay. What are your go-to resources or practices for staying up to date and continuously learning in such fast-evolving field?
So see, I'm notoriously bad at looking at news, like just in general. I'm really bad at. That's ironic, I know. So I'm notoriously bad with keeping up to date with anything, and like my coping mechanism. And I know that this is a little bit of a position of privilege. My coping mechanism for that is just having friends who are good at it with keeping up. And see, if the thing is, I like to, for me, programming is a very social activity. So I like to ask for feedback and stuff. I like to ask for reviews all the time. I give reviews to other people. I talk about like what I want to implement with other people. So there's a lot of communication happening with other people. And a lot of times it's like, hey, Jan, this thing you're doing, it's stupid. Why don't you do it this way? And I'm like, oh, I didn't know this way existed. Cool. Thanks. So I think the main way I stay up to date is just like through reviews, either giving or receiving reviews from others. And for the newsletter, like one of my big goals for it to not be as burdensome for the maintainers was that to kind of have it be a platform where other people submit their news to me and I can like just approve them instead of me having to seek out other people. So that's worked out pretty well so far. So every month we get like 6 contributions or so from other people. And at the end, I still go and I scout a little bit out to see like other things that I knew that I might have forgotten about. But again, like I have set up some arrangements with people to send me pings about things that I might have missed otherwise. So I guess my resources being a social leech. But
that's good. That's also same as going on like a conference or an event and just talking to people and
right.
tell you something new that you're not aware about. Yeah, that's a good way.
Exactly. I think the best way to stay up to date really is just talking with other people, and they will link you to resources. Like someone will say like, hey, there's actually a blog post about this, you should read it. And then you look at it and you're like, oh, this is way too long, I'm not going to read it. But maybe a few days later you will read it. And that's where you get the news from.
True. Okay, so this is my favorite question. A lot of people might not be aware about this, or maybe they are, but you're actually the author of Rust Standard Library Cookbook, right? And you wrote this book. First of all, I will also link it down in the description box. But
I mean, no, I will stop you there. No need. It's very outdated at this point. Like I wrote it like 7 years ago. Like the things that I wrote are very out to date. Like with today's Rust. But maybe. For anyone reading, you don't need to buy it. You need to subscribe to this channel. That's more important.
Oh,
that is the.
But still, like writing book.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a lot to ask about this. First of all, like, what was your process of even writing the book itself? Like, what motivated you to write the book? Probably that you were annoyed that there was no book about this written. Yes.
Surprisingly, no, that was not it.
Wow.
So this came out of this period of my life when I first discovered Rust, and I got really into it. Like, oh wow, this is so cool. And I started going like of course, I was all the time on Stack Overflow, and I started noticing that there were a bunch of questions that I actually knew the answer to. So I started actually not only looking at Stack Overflow, but answering on Stack Overflow.
You have a lot of
let me flex for a moment. Wait, I my reputation right now is 3,700.
Whoa.
I don't know how much that is in today's economy, but at least some years ago, that used to be a lot. So, so I started to write a lot of answers, and like, you know, Stack Overflow is really good at like capturing you, because it's like, oh, if you have some more points, you get this new right. You suddenly can downvote people, and if you have more points, you can edit people's posts without them having to approve it. Like, oh, more power to me. That's cool. That's nice. And like, I kind of got sucked into this like reputation game mechanic. I'm like, oh, I want to have as many points as I can. So I got really to Stack Overflow for a while. And I got to the point where I got like this little badge on my profile of like being in the top 1% of people in the Rust category. And through that, actually, a publishing company called Pact Publishing came to me, and they asked me to write that book. Now, full disclosure, it sounds cool, but also Pact Publishing does a lot of books. So it's not as big of a flex as you would think. Like, it's not that hard to be contacted by them. But still, they did contact me and asked like, oh.
Being contacted, it's about actually... You remember how we talked about making games and actually releasing the prototype?
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
Books, right? It's not easy to write a book at all. You have so much.
Yeah, definitely. So I got contacted by them, and they were like, "Oh yeah, look, you could write this book for us." Like, the money wasn't great, but like I thought, this kind of sounds like something cool to do in my life, you know, to have this experience of doing that. And so I signed a contract with them. And the moment that you sign your contract, you know, it becomes a whole different thing, because you have a deadline. And suddenly you get into I had a deadline. And so suddenly things become what?
How many months were the deadline?
Oh, the thing is I stretched it, so I don't remember what the original deadline was, but like in the end it took like a year or so to write it. And I got into like a huge amount of stress, because like I was in that time I was doing my apprenticeship as a programmer, right? So I went to school, I went to work and stuff. So I was already doing like a 100% job, but I also had to write the book somehow. And that was a tough time. Like, I did not have a social life at that time. And but actually finishing the book, having a deadline is a good motivator for that. Yes.
For procrastination, for sure. Even for me.
Yeah. Like I also had like guide. It wasn't as strict, but I had guidelines for like when specific chapters should be done. So it wasn't. I didn't really have the option of saying like, yeah, I will do it tomorrow. I was like, this chapter needs to be done in a week. Guess I won't sleep today. Yeah.
Oh no.
So the process for writing that was I got like this from the publisher. I got this list of things that I wanted to include, and based on that, I very quickly had an idea of like how the chapters should look like. There's also like a kind of logical progression of like, you're probably not going to start with networking in the beginning, right? You're going to start with like, how do I print something? And then you're going to maybe go on with like, how do I read files and things like that? Because those are the first problems you run into. And so I had this vague idea of like the chapters and the order they would be in. And then for the actual content, I feel like the more sleep deprived I was, the easier it got to write it. Because like when you start writing, there's like this blank page, and you're like, oh my god, there's literature, and then there's this crap that I write. So how can I pretend to be a writer? But like the more sleep deprived you get, the more you start not caring, and like
Oh my
like,
god.
I remember there were many times at like 2 a.m. where I just thought of like an extremely stupid joke and I wrote it in there. I was like, and that just motivated me. Like, every time I submitted some chapter, I got some professional editors to look at that. And that was really valuable. Really, really, really valuable. If you've never worked with a professional editor before, it might seem like maybe weird, because like the editing that I had before that was like, I don't know, I write an essay and I ask like some friends to look over it or anything. But the process of working with an editor is very different, because you notice that they have a way of making things more interesting, and you learn from that. Like they have a sentence that you write, they rewrote it, and you see like, oh, there's just something in there that looks more interesting. I don't know what it is, but it is more interesting, and you learn from that. And that was really cool to see.
Yeah.
And
yeah, sorry, I'm really ignorant about this, but do they like change it, or do they like change it and tell you that it's better to write it this way, or do they like permanently change it and it's the way to go?
no, it's like when you get a review on GitHub, they have just like requests, and you can like exactly, they have comments and you can accept or deny them. But like in 99% of the cases, you want to accept them, because like, oh, these are people who know their stuff, right? And it's obvious. And like many, only thing I took issue with was like that for some jokes that I wrote in there, the comment sometimes was just like highlighted. My joke with the comment was question mark.
You did not check them out. The editor did not pass the vibe check, unfortunately.
Yeah, I was like, okay, let me remove that joke in that case.
No.
But yeah. So having these editors looking over it, that was just definitely something that made me feel more confident in my like my creative output, because like if I had no one to look at it, I know that I would have felt insecure, like I'm not a writer, I don't know what any of this is, but having other people like look at it and like at the end give their thumbs up was like, oh good, so some actual adults have looked at it and it's good.
That's cool. Oh,
and like at the end of the day, what felt really nice was holding it in my hands, like physically printed, and just seeing my name there. Like, whoa, that's
like you can always pull out your book. That's my name.
Yeah, like I have it in my bookshelf, and I just like sometimes hope that people like walk across and are like, oh, funny, this person has the same name as you. Like, it never happened. It didn't happen a single time in my life. But I always had the hope.
You're prepared for the day to come.
Yeah. But like at the end of the day, I will say like writing a book is not just like the process of writing is not as hard as people think. At least how I thought about it. Like for me, like it's felt.
I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
So it's not difficult, but so it took you around 1 year to write it, right? But during that 1 year, maybe some things in Rust changed, and you had to always keep up to date, and you had to go back to your book and edit those parts out, or like add or remove some stuff. Do you think that was difficult? I think that's really difficult.
I think that actually like that was when Rust was already fairly stable around these parts. I didn't have to change much. Mm-hmm. But what was very annoying is that I had a few things that I wanted to write about, but they weren't stable yet. They were stable soon. And while they were still unstable, because of my time pressure, I had to already write about them, but then they changed. And so there are certain parts of the book that I had to rewrite like 4 times until they became stable enough. Mm-hmm. But like, I was kind of prepared for that because I knew that it was unstable, but still that was annoying. But the parts that were already stabilized, they didn't change much. They were fine. Mm-hmm. They were fine. Mm-hmm. The real hard part is just like the volume of how much you have to write. You know, writing a chapter is easy. Writing 12 chapters, that's just endurance.
Oh yeah, I see what you mean.
I felt like before I thought like, oh, writers, those are these like gifted people who have this magic ability to write,
Yeah.
But now my perspective is just like, everyone can write. You just need to have endurance to continue writing.
What about writing in perspective of, so like in the previous interview I did with Zelda, she was talking about writing code examples, right?
Yeah.
Because you're aware that your book is being read by people that might not be experts in Rust. I mean, it's the whole point of the cookbook, right?
Yeah.
What kind of, was it difficult to like choose like a specific, not really a language, but to like think about how easy you have to phrase everything so it's going to be understandable to other people?
Yeah, definitely. I'll say like this is also an issue for documenting libraries. It's not just for writing a book. It's like there's a trade-off between like how big is the code, how concise is it, how simple is it, and what kind of skills do you expect the reader to have. Like I very early like made the decision like, oh, I assume you have gone through the basics of Rust. Like, what the borrow checker is, you know how lifetimes work. Maybe I'm gonna talk about a few tricky parts if there's something tricky, but like I generally expect you that you're able to write a hello world, like a bit more than that maybe. But you're not able to, I don't know, write your own web server or something. That's definitely out of scope. So I think that was very important, like from the beginning, to say like, okay, I expect that this is clear for the reader on a syntactic level. But then later for the code examples, it's very hard to decide like, do I want to have a very realistic code example, which might be a little bit long? Okay, if I have that, I need to have a lot of comments to really walk the person through it. Oh, but that makes it even longer. And the longer it is, the more things are in the back of your mind. So I start splitting this code example into like sub examples. But then, of course, you run like also into the issue of, oh, this is like a random thing that the author wrote about like 12 pages ago, and suddenly it's relevant. Okay. And a lot of times I really just had to write an example and give it to someone and be like, hey, did you get what's happening? And usually people are polite and they're like, oh yeah, it's fine. And then I'm like, okay, can you explain to me what it does? And they're like, oh, I have no idea. I'm like, yeah, why did you say it was fine? Yeah.
Oh my God.
So yeah, there was a whole bunch of times of just annoying people and telling them, hey, do you understand what this code does?
I was recently also invited to be a reviewer of a book. I cannot say which one yet, most likely.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really nice to have reviewers, in my opinion. Like, I'm not an expert in Rust in the way. I don't know if you're aware, but I come from like DevOps world. Actually, I'm not like a software developer at all. So yeah, I think testing on people like me, I can code, but I'm not an expert. So I think it's really good.
Yeah, that's pretty ideal.
Yeah,
that's pretty ideal. That's exactly the kind of person you want. And sometimes it's also just good to go to someone who like is a complete beginner and like they have done like a little bit of Python in their life, but that's it. You can still show them. Just like, they're not going to understand the syntax at all, of course, but if you wrote your example good enough, that they should still understand what it does. But that is like just something for creative people in general to keep in mind. Like, everything is cool to you while you're doing it, sure, but whatever it is it like, no matter if it's code or a game or a book or whatever, you should always show it to other people, like from the get-go, no matter how shitty it is. Just get it out there, get feedback.
Yeah. Okay, so now you just mentioned feedback. What about feedback about the book? Did you have like a specific way to get feedback? Like maybe you posted about it somewhere, or you were just reading?
Well, I got a lot of feedback from the editors, right? But after it published, that is the good thing about having a publisher. They publish it for you. So they had it like on basically every site that sells books. And there I was able to just like scroll through the reviews that people gave on their own. And that was cool. I was like super scared of.
Did you interact with a user that gave feedback?
Yes and no. So I did not interact with people who wrote reviews on these storefronts because no one wrote anything about any problems they ran into. If anyone wrote anything like, "Oh, actually, this and that doesn't work," I would definitely have interacted. But surprisingly, it was all like pretty good. Like,
Nice.
no, I was like, "Oh, well, people like it." Well, what I did interact with is I left the code base. I open sourced the code base that was used in the book. It's my profile, and some readers actually noticed mistakes, and then they made pull requests for it or opened issues for it, and so I kept that one up to date. So that's the way in which I interacted. Yeah,
That's really
that was pretty cool, seeing people like submit PRs and me getting like this visceral feeling of, oh, a real person actually read my stuff. Interesting.
yeah, for sure. Oh yeah, I wanted to also ask, do you have any books, future books or publications that you're thinking to like do?
Well, I think I'm not soon gonna write another 12 chapter book in a year or so, just because it's like so much time. But like every now and then there is like some kind of topic that I write a gigantic thing about. Like a couple of years ago, I published this extremely long read about an overview of current computational theories of consciousness, which I managed to smuggle into the curriculum of one of our courses at university. That was like
Wow.
I was very proud of that. But that also led to me actually giving 2 lectures per semester on that topic. So that's cool.
Yeah.
But
Oh, wow.
that is cool. But other stuff that I want to write about is obviously my master's thesis, right?
Yeah. Almost the same as writing a book. Actually, the same as
Exactly.
writing a book. But you
Like
it's extra hard, and you might not get your
exactly. And I will also be doing my PhD after, so I'm definitely gonna be publishing something there, right? But I think what I'm mostly publishing right now is little libraries of stuff that I find interesting. Like for example, right now, like for a personal project, I would like to be able to have a 3D environment where I can pick up, dynamic objects and throw them around. And I'm a big fan of how this is done in Half-Life 2. I think it feels very nice there when you pick up an object or throw it. So right now I'm writing a little library for that, and I'm publishing that. And like, I try to be very thorough in my documentation with these kinds of things, which is something where my experience of writing the book definitely helped. Like this is the exact same kind of skill set that I need for writing documentation of a library. And so these are the things that I'm working on. But yeah, there will be some scientific writing in a few years. But I will not be able to tell readers go and read it because these kinds of things are always hidden behind paywalls or whatnot. So go and pirate my stuff. Everyone reading, please do more academic pirating. I think that is very important.
And if someone wants to see like a work you're doing, what is the best source? Probably GitHub. Do you advise them to like check your profile on GitHub?
Yeah. I have a real bunch of stuff on GitHub. I feel like GitHub is the only place on the internet that I keep up to date. But that's just because like I also work by pushing stuff onto it. Like I know that I should update my homepage or something, but it's like but then I would have to look into the CSS and the HTML of fixing that, and actually,
Not into that.
yeah. It's like I never quite got into web development. It's like always something that I'm happy when I get something out that looks kind of okay-ish, but it's not that I don't like it. It's more like I'm missing so much knowledge there that I'm like not ready to invest the time in getting. But yeah, check out my GitHub. Subscribe to my GitHub. Does that work? No.
Follow.
Go follow. Exactly. Follow my GitHub.
And also
First subscribe to this. First subscribe to this channel. That is step 1. Then step 2. Go follow my GitHub.
third step is don't forget to check out the newsletter, the Rust Game Dev newsletter.
Yeah, the newsletter now has this extremely advanced feature called email subscription. I don't know if you heard of it, but you can now actually enter your email address and you get it delivered per mail. So yeah. Do you have any promo codes for sponsors that we can drop right now? Go sign up with Audible.
Okay, I have a final question for you.
Sure.
So you're a person that wears many hats, right? You're an engineer, you are an author of a book, you're a student. I don't know, you do a lot of stuff. How do you balance these roles, and what advice do you have for others that are also trying to manage multiple responsibilities?
I feel like for me, I noticed that there's two major drives in my life. Like the one is the drive to consume stuff, and the other one is the drive to create stuff. And I feel like everything in my life kind of goes into one of these buckets. So for me, like working on game development stuff or like writing like a scientific paper, it kind of feels similar in a way. Like, sure, what I end up doing actually is different, but like the vibe I get of like, oh, I sit there at my desk and I think and put my thoughts into some kind of form, like it kind of ends up being like the same thing. So I don't know. I know that I used to not look at it this way. Like, as we said before, when I dropped out of high school, I very much had this idea of like, there's all of these irrelevant things that I don't care about. But for me right now, it's more of there's knowledge in the world and I can contribute to it or like profit from it. And like this, I feel like this framing kind of allows me to be creative in many ways. I feel like this is a non-answer because like it's just like, I have the vibe of like everything is connected, man. But it really feels like there's just like this process of contributing something to humanity, no matter how small it is. And
by the way, sorry for interrupting you, but you remember before we started recording the video, I mentioned that your name reminds me of Van Helsing, not Van Helsing, my God, Van Hohenheim from the Full Alchemist. You know, he also has the same personality that he's teaching alchemy to other people, other characters. Right. So that's like you right now, actually.
Yeah, see, I just take my personality from anime. That's my secret. I think one thing that inspired me is there's this great artist called Childish Gambino, Donald Glover, and like he's mostly known for his music, but he's very adamant about like saying like, I'm not like a musician. I'm just an artist in general. And it kind of stuck with me of like, this person who does like some supremely amazing music doesn't see himself as a musician. Just someone like who does stuff. And I think it's very important for people to not put too many to not box themselves into one category of like, I'm X, so I must do X. Like, just do whatever you think is interesting. And this goes back to what I had with my experience of like seeing someone else open up a PR, you know, like that was so shocking to me that someone can just go and contribute somewhere without like any process, without any kind of supreme skill or certification. You can just go and do something. What? And I feel like it's like,
what about when you?
Yeah, I feel like it's like that everywhere in life. Sorry, yeah.
What about when you learned that you could also fork a project? Was that also a mind blowing? Wow, I can take an entire project and make it mine.
That is more scary to me. Of like, there's this supremely beautiful thing that someone else made, and now I'm touching this weird clone of it. Like, but so I don't want to maintain forks. I only have forks for like, oh, I need to hack something in and I need it right now.
Oh my god. Wow. Wow. Actually, my face hurts from smiling and laughing so much.
That's great. I like to hear that.
So yeah, actually, I don't have any more questions to ask you. Maybe you have a question you want to ask me, or you want to ask a question to some people that will eventually end up watching this video.
Yeah, well, my number one question is, why have you not hit that fucking subscribe button yet? So, okay.
Oh my god, yeah.
So, yeah, my question for you is, what kind of Rust events are you organizing in Georgia? How is the scene there?
Yeah, so actually, I really wanted to mention this because I would love to invite you in Georgia and in Tbilisi, which is the capital city, and we can do an event and you can come and be a guest speaker. That would be awesome.
That would be great. I would be honored.
We organized first event in November with my friend who is also a co-organizer, David, and we got, I think there were like 60 people that showed up, which was really shocking because I did not know anyone that uses Rust.
For a first event, 60 people?
For first
like
event.
All strangers?
Yeah.
Damn. That is a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot, and it was really shocking because there were people from all kinds of backgrounds. A lot of game dev lovers, by the way. Just saying.
Did you feel like a little bit scared of like, there's all of these people who have expectations?
No, not at all. I was so prepared. I actually ordered like Ferris plushies to give away. I ordered a lot of stickers. I love going on events for merch. Like merch is so important to me. You know, I mean, who doesn't like free stuff? Come on.
Yeah, merch is the best.
You're right. I had really cute Ferris stickers, Ferris plushies, good food, and yeah, people showed up. We did the talks, and then we went to I think it was like a Chinese restaurant to eat and like get some drinks. So it was a good day.
Wow.
It was really hard to
super
find
good.
speakers. It was so difficult to find speakers. Fortunately, at that time, there were a lot of expats in Georgia, and I could easily contact them. But we do have a session, and it's so difficult to find speakers. I don't know.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
So you just have to go
because
with people. Can you please be a speaker at the Rust event? But yeah, it's really hard.
Well, that's interesting because when I did the Rust Fest 2024, I know that they had a bit of an issue with too many people submitting talks and too few people actually buying tickets. So interesting to see that it's kind of the opposite there. So what kind of talks are given usually in Georgia?
I don't think we have like anything specific, but as I mentioned, I think game dev is like really popular. Most likely because people can relate to it, and a lot of people are into Bevy. I'm sure people that will watch this video will also comment about it. And yeah, I would love to do an event and invite you as a guest. That would be like really cool if you could like make it and come here, you know?
Oh, I will gladly attend that.
Okay, wow, okay. Signing you up. You can't escape anymore. I'm joking.
No. All right.
So yeah. I just want to thank you again. Like, it was so fun to talk to you. You're an amazing person and you're so funny. I'm so glad I got to meet you in person right now. I mean, meet you.
That's right. It's the sleep deprivation. That's my secret.
Are you sleep deprived right now?
I'm sleep deprived since weeks because I have I wrote this. I have a condition called cluster headache, which is right now flaring a bit up. So I'm not having the best sleep until that calms down a little bit. So that's definitely helping my humor. Yes.
Okay, I see. So yeah, thanks again. Yeah, I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me, and thank you to everyone listening to us. For sticking with the long runtime. Do you have like a cool outro that we can swish to?
Actually, I don't have.
Like, is there?
I didn't think about it at all.
Okay. Well, I'm just in case, like for the future. Hello, everyone. You can click on this video here to go to the next talk.
Okay.
And now, future, you can put a link in there.
Uh-huh.
Got you.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks. Yeah.
Okay. See you. Goodbye.